Hello, in this video what I would like to do is talk through the Emoji Research Project assignment brief to give you a sense of what is coming up and what you're going to be required to do. Now, to find this document, it's going to be available inside, so you're in the Research Methods module. There's an assessment area just here. If you open that up, you'll see a document here that has the Emoji Research Project information. Hopefully you found that, because that is where this video is going to be. I've downloaded the PDF brief, just one I made earlier, to let you see what that contains. So let's start at the beginning. So this research project is going to be worth 30% of your grade, and you're going to hand it in on the Friday of week 11. Now, I reckon this can be completely concluded by the Friday of week 10, but because there's that bit of space there, I've just given you the option. People have busy lives, but I think you can get it done earlier than that. There's going to be an opportunity to submit some of your progress for formative feedback in week 8, and that will be your literature review. So if you have any literature content that you want me to review, there'll be an announcement near the time. Email that to me and I will have a review and give it back to you to give you some direction for the remaining weeks. So what is the problem that we're going to be solving here? So emoji are Unicode standards, characters essentially, and we use them all the time, right? We send them to each other, they have meaning, they have emotion, but they can be misunderstood for lots of different reasons. So one of those reasons is that designs vary across platforms. One of those reasons is cultural differences in how people use emoji. And the other reason is that there is a kind of popular culture meaning which extends beyond those existing subcultures. So things like the peach emoji has an underlying meaning, for example. So what we want to do in this project is explore how older adults interact with emoji, and we're going to do that by conducting qualitative interviews, analysing the results, and then presenting them in the form of a research paper. So the reason I've picked the emoji topic is because I've done some previous work on emoji with people with visual impairment, so I kind of know the literature that's out there, and I know the areas that you want to be looking at and the key things that you will find. So the reason we use older adults in our research question is purely for convenience. We have a user centre of older adults, typically based within the QMB. At the moment it's virtual, and we will invite those older adults to take part in our research. So we'll work through each week on different parts of the process, so that by the end you're each then able to submit an individual write-up in the form of that research paper. So I have submitted ethics for this work. So the ethics materials you can find in the week 7 section, because that's when we're going to be talking about ethics for human research studies. But please have a look at that documentation and make sure you're familiar with what's being asked of you as the researcher, and any questions about that you can bring them to the class and we'll discuss them. I might ask you some questions as well, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So what you should be doing is submitting a written research paper. So that research paper is going to be in the ACM conference format. So that's the Association for Computer Machinery. That is a publisher. So they publish proceedings from conferences and they publish journals related to computing. So you're going to do no more than 6 pages. That 6 pages does not include references. So your references can start on the 7th page. There's going to be sample headings already in a template to help you follow it. So let's go ahead and see that template. So if you click on this link here, it will open this template. There is a document already available, a video for you to go to help you understand LaTeX, and I'll also be taking questions on that in the class, and we'll just make sure that everyone's comfortable with using that. The reason we're using LaTeX is because it is a common way to write research papers. So this gives you a real kind of nice deep experience of what it's like to write one of those papers, in this case a qualitative one. So what you should do is, if you hit menu, you'll be able to copy this project. So this project at the moment will be read-only for you. If you hit copy project, you'll be able to give it a new name, hit copy, and then that will appear in your projects list. You can get to your projects list by clicking that up arrow there. That will take you out to a big list of all of your projects. I'll just go back into this one. So I'm not going to explain how LaTeX works. You can see that separate video for it. What I am going to talk about is some of the elements that are particularly pertinent to the fact that it's an ACM template. So the first of those is that you have these CCS concepts. Now this bit here is the CCS concept. You do not need to change that. That can stay exactly as it is. I've already set that up. Now the reason it's there is, let me show you what it looks like. If I use this link in the template, which will take me to a tool to generate those, it's going to take me to a system a bit like this, and you can see that I've already got accessibility selected, but I can select other things by, picking items. Yep, that'll do, and then assigning it to the concept, so I can add it in. If I preview that chart and ask for the flat view, I get this link, or this table, which shows me the key areas that this paper has relevance to. And I can get the code for it. You see the begin CSS XML, and I'm just going to copy that code directly into the section on the template. But why are we bothering with this code, right? So let me go to the digital library. I'll search for myself, just because I know then what I'm looking at. Now I have two accounts, because there was some issue at one point where I managed to create a double one, so let me make sure I select the correct one. The one without a picture is the most recent one. So what you see is these are kind of key bits of data from my publications within the ACM. So the ACM is one publisher. But the key thing is, see this information area, this subject areas? These are the CCS. These are the key concepts. So this is a way for me to hone in on, okay, let's say I'm only interested in my accessibility papers. I can start to see them. So if you're someone who's new to research and you're kind of searching around a topic, then that gives you some confidence that you're looking in the right place because someone else has categorized it as the same thing. And so you can start to narrow down papers by people, etc. So if I just kind of pick someone else who, let's pick Annalou. I'm guessing that Annaloo's will be a bit more varied than mine, and her subject areas, you'll see a few more of them. Yeah, so you can see she's got more kind of different subdomains than I have. So that takes care of the subject areas. The other thing that you will have seen on the template was keywords. Now, if we go over to two kind of boxes along, you'll see that there are keywords. These keywords are defined by the author. Okay, so if I go back to the template and let you see, so I have predefined emoji, older adults, and user experience as my keywords, and I've done that in the template there. So that information is what is required to give you that kind of context within the digital library for the ACM. Now, the other thing that is next to that is the ACM reference format. So what happens is every paper that is published has that reference format kind of front and center, and that means that you can go and find some information. You can click on the link to get to the digital library entry for that paper, but it also means that you can cite that and other work in the appropriate format. So you'll have heard of different reference styles. The ACM has their own reference style, which is this one. And you can find So you can find that just further up inside the main document. Now, the only thing that will need to change to make that sensible is the project title and the author. So if we were to change the project title, I have some title here, so I'm going to call it the title of the project. And I'm going to change the author one to be my name. And I'm going to change the authors here. Let's see what happens if I need to change that or not. So I'm going to hit compile, let that run, and you'll see that it is now taking that information I've given it, Rachel Menzies, the title of the project has changed, and it's pulled it and made it visible for everyone. So all of the information that you need to be able to change it on the PDF will be inside this main document. The reference list, so the references are visible at the bottom, and it uses the ACM reference format, which is generated from these files here, and it uses the references file. So when you're adding things to the reference, you need to use the BibTeX style. So I'll just show you how to do that quickly, because this is probably the easiest way to do it. So let me pick a paper. Let me pick this one. If you're in the digital library, and each kind of publisher will have their own way of doing this, this is the export citation button. If I hit that, I can just basically copy and paste that content into my BibTeX file. It gives me a whole bunch of information. This part here at the top I can change, so I'm just going to call it Waiving Accessibility because that's part of the title, and I'm going to call it Waiving Accessibility 2019. So if I just take a copy of that, and I go back to my introduction, let's say that I want to add a reference at the end here. So I'm going to say /cite, and I'm just going to select Waiving Accessibility. And when I recompile that, I will see that that next reference has appeared down here on the reference list. Hopefully. Yeah, there we go. So remember that references are not included in the page limit for this assignment, and they can start on page 7. When you have completely generated your document and you're happy with it, you can hit download PDF. That will download the final PDF document, which you can then submit as your submission. So let me go back to the information. Okay, so how are we going to get from kind of week 1 or week 6 when you first start this through to the end? So the first week we're going to read a research paper that follows a similar method to this so that you can get a sense of why the paper is laid out that way, what sort of decisions you might want to make when you are laying out your own paper, and some discussion about that process. So it's going to be an interview method paper, and we want to really understand what the pros and cons of the interview are, how that interview was structured. We'll have a look at some of the supplementary material provided to get a sense of what sorts of questions were asked in that interview and how they translated into the results. So that will give us a nice overview of what it is that you want to achieve within the next weeks. Week 7, we're going to look at ethics and interview guide. So everyone will generate their own interview guide, bring it to the class on week 7. We'll then spend some time during that session to hash it out, decide what we think are the best ones as a team, and we'll create one interview guide. Everyone will then use that as the definitive interview guide going forward, and everyone will ask the same questions, essentially, or the same starter questions. This gives us some kind of validity in our results because we know that everyone's been asked similar questions and had an opportunity to answer those questions. Once we have that interview guide set up and we're happy with that, in week 8, you will interview one participant. So I will arrange that participant for you. I'll liaise with the user centre and I'll just put you in touch by email. Your responsibility at that point is to arrange a mutually convenient time between you and the participant. You'll conduct the interview on Teams unless there's any pressing reason not to. If that's the case, you must speak to me to get permission to do that, because we have ethics for how we're storing and managing our data. And then you need to transcribe that interview. So there's a lot going on in that week. That's the practical stuff that we're going to do. Also in week 8, you should have been over the previous weeks kind of looking at the background research on emoji, and you will submit, if you want formative feedback, a PDF, just like we were looking at there, but just fill in whatever parts you've been able to do. So you'll be able to do the related work section. You may also want to start writing things like the kind of, you won't necessarily have demographic information, but you can start to kind of flesh that out. You can start to give me your method, that sort of stuff. Okay, by the end of week 8, everyone will have done their interviews and everyone will have an interview transcript. In week 9, we'll then look at how we're going to analyse that. So how are we going to break all of that information down into its constituent parts, into single codes, they're going to be called, into single instances of data, and then build it back up to give us a picture of what those participants said. And once we get that picture, that's going to be our results. So you can see a sample thematic map, which is the kind of summary output of that process in the template already, and we're working towards building one of them for ourselves. So this is quite a lengthy process, the thematic analysis, and we're going to do things that are useful to us to speed it along, which are not the way it would typically happen. And the reason we're going to do that is because I want to make sure everyone gets some experience of conducting some thematic analysis. So our inter-rater reliability is going to look a bit strange, but it's about the process for us at that point. Once we have our results, your job is then to complete your write-up, and part of that will be reflecting on what those results mean within the context of your related work. So in your related work, you should have identified a gap. We don't know enough about how older adults use emoji as a sample. And then you're going to say, well, this matches with other work for other demographic groups, but it also leaves us these further questions that we think, or I think, need answered. You writing the paper. So that's going to be done in week 10. So as I say, I think you can get that done at the end of week 10. That will give you time to dedicate to other assessments, which will no doubt be happening in other modules around that time. But to give you that flexibility, I've said do it up to week 11. So you're going to submit your paper using Blackboard. So in the assessment area, if I just flip across, there is Emoji Research Project, submit here. So that will become visible to you and you can submit your project in there. Remember that it's 1 grade point for every 24 hours that it's late as per the assessment policy. So the way the marks are allocated looks like this. So these sections map directly to the template. So you can see that there is an introduction, there's a related work, there's an interview section, there's a discussion section, and a conclusion. And so this will give you some idea of what you need to put in each of those sections. So we'll discuss in more detail in the first week how a paper can be structured and what sort of information might be required. So you're going to want to take some good notes during that session, because that will help you then fill in the gaps in this process. The only addition to this that is not in the final template is the professionalism grade. And the professionalism grade is here because research is fairly high stakes when it comes to submissions. So if you do not meet the submission requirements for a conference, you risk being desk rejected. That means that your submission will basically be put in the bin and will not go any further through the review process, potentially to be admitted to the conference. This has got implications on careers. Usually you are, publishing because you want to advance your career. If you don't conform to the page limit, again, you may be desk rejected. If you don't submit a PDF in the appropriate way that you've been asked to, they may just not pass it on to reviewers. So it's important that you follow the specific submission guidelines, and we'll maybe have a look at what they look like for a real conference to let you see some of the complexities that might be involved at different stages of submitting your work to a conference or a journal, or in fact to the publisher after your paper's been accepted. You need to have references in the ACM style. Again, not having appropriate references, the risk of desk rejection, and you have to have things that are well structured. Particularly because we're using that accessibility tag, you just want to show that you understand what accessibility is, and a large percent of that is having appropriate headings and subheadings and things like that. Make it easy for people to read the paper. Okay, so that should give you we're at like 22 minutes almost, sorry. So that should give you some sense of what the project is about, break it down into some kind of constituent parts for you. But I think the whole thing will become much clearer when we do our first paper review in week 6. So don't overthink that paper review, just take notes, whatever you feel, whatever you think, and together we'll put those into some sort of kind of format or structure to help you move forward. Right, that is it. So just final reminder, you will find all of the information for this on the assessment area on Blackboard. All right, thank you, speak to you soon.